On a Friday in July 2024, the IT security team at No.B4 noticed something unusual. A laptop they had shipped 2 weeks earlier to a new senior software engineer in Atlanta, let's call him Kyle, the name on his employment paperwork, had begun installing remote administration tools that had no business being on a corporate machine. Within 25 minutes, the security team had isolated the device. Within 4 hours, they had pulled his employment file, run a forensic trace on his interview videos, and discovered 3 things that should not have been possible. The Atlanta address on his lease was a mail drop. The face that had appeared in 4 rounds of video interviews did not exist anywhere on the internet before 2023. And the laptop, which they had shipped to Georgia, was pinging on cellular data from somewhere east of the Caspian Sea. Kyle was not Kyle. Kyle was a North Korean IT operative who had used a stolen American identity, a face swap deepfake during every interview, and a US-based shell address laptop farm to mask his real location. No.B4 caught him in 2 weeks. According to the FBI's later disclosures, the same operator had been hired, under 12 different names, by 12 other companies, including at least 3 Fortune 500s. This is the deepfake hiring scam, a state-backed fraud now generating hundreds of millions of dollars a year for the Kim regime, and almost every large US company has been targeted. Here is how it works and how to spot it. The operation is industrial. North Korea operates an estimated 5,000 to 7,000 IT workers stationed in Russia, China, and Southeast Asia, whose job is to be hired remotely by Western tech companies under false identities and quietly send their salaries back to Pyongyang. They have been doing this since 2017, but until 2023, the operation looked clumsy. Bad accents on video calls, obvious resume gaps, mismatched time zones. What changed in 2023 was face swap deepfakes and voice cloning. Suddenly, the same operator could plausibly present as a 35-year-old white American man with a Boston accent in one interview and a Chicago accent in the next. The U.S. Department of Justice has documented earnings of over $600 million over 5 years funneled to North Korea's missile program through this exact channel. The State Department's reward for information on this network is now $5 million. The operation has 3 parts. First, the identity. The operator buys a stolen U.S. identity from one of several Asian-based identity brokers, about $3,000 for a clean record, including a real social security number, driver's license image, and a U.S. credit history. The identity belongs to a real American, often someone in financial distress who has sold their identity for cash, occasionally someone who is deceased. Second, the face. The operator uses an open-source face swap model, usually a fine-tuned DeepFace Live or Insight Face pipeline, running locally on a gaming PC during the video interview. The face it presents is consistent across calls, photorealistic enough to pass a 50-minute Zoom interview, and immune to most lighting changes. Some operators use generated synthetic faces. Others use stolen real faces from American men whose social media profiles have been scraped. Third, the laptop farm. When the company ships a corporate laptop to the operator's U.S. address, that address is a real residential house operated by an American, often unwittingly recruited via a work-from-home Craigslist ad, who is paid $200 a month to receive packages and keep the laptops powered on. The operator then remotes into those laptops from Pyongyang or Vladivostok using software like AnyDesk or Splashtop. From the company's perspective, the employee is logging in from their home in Atlanta. From the network's perspective, the traffic looks completely domestic. From the operator's perspective, they're sitting at a console 6,000 miles away. What the operator actually does once hired varies. The most common path is simply pulling a salary. A North Korean operative on a US salary of $80,000 to $200,000 a year sends almost all of it home, retaining maybe 5% for living expenses. With thousands of operators doing this simultaneously, the channel generates hundreds of millions yearly. A smaller subset of operators use their access for direct theft, stealing source code, exfiltrating customer data, installing backdoors for later use. The No.B4 case was that second kind. A few have been linked to outright extortion against their employer after termination. The FBI has flagged that crypto and fintech companies are now overrepresented in incidents because the inside access can be converted directly to liquid assets. Who's running this? The operation is coordinated by Bureau 121, North Korea's state cyber unit, with on-the-ground management in Russian and Chinese border cities. The operators themselves are often promising young coders identified during their teens, sent abroad after technical training, and kept on rotation with their families, held as effective hostages. They're not freelancers. They're employees of a state operation generating hard currency for a nuclear program. The US Treasury sanctioned several Chinese and Russian companies known to host these workers in late 2023, with limited deterrent effect. The State Department now publishes a hiring defense advisory specifically on this threat. Who gets targeted? Any US company hiring remote technical staff. The 2024 cluster of cases includes Fortune 500 financial services firms, several major SaaS companies, a number of cybersecurity firms, ironically, defense contractors, and at least one healthcare data company. The Justice Department's 2024 superseding indictments against 14 US citizens for running laptop farms revealed a network supplying over 300 companies. Public reports suggest the operators apply at scale, often hundreds of applications per identity per year, with maybe 1% landing an offer. The cost per successful hire is low, and the revenue per successful hire is enormous, so the math works at any quality bar the operators can clear. The deepfake quality is what makes this hard to catch in interviews. The current generation of face swap tools running on consumer hardware produces output that does not visibly flicker, holds eye contact, and tracks head movement convincingly. The lip sync is the weakest point. Under aggressive lighting changes, hard consonants can drift by a frame or two. A trained interviewer can sometimes catch a faint shimmer at the temples or an unusual eye blink rhythm. Untrained interviewers almost never do. Companies that have caught operators consistently report it happened post-hire. Through anomalous laptop telemetry, mismatched IP geo, or a flag from a colleague who noticed the new hire's verbal patterns did not match a follow-up phone call. For companies, the defense playbook is now standardized but still inconsistently applied. Require live video on the first day. Ship laptops to addresses you have independently verified by sending registered mail beforehand. Require that any package be signed for by the named employee, with photo ID, witnessed via video by HR. Use endpoint telemetry that flags anomalies in startup geolocation versus stated work address. Cross-reference IP geo of the first 10 work sessions against the hiring profile. Require one in-person event, a quarterly meetup, an onboarding day, an off-site, that uncovered operators consistently no-show or claim emergencies. Several of the platforms that hire remote engineers have started introducing live deepfake detection tools that run during the interview itself, looking at facial micro-expressions and blink rate. KnowBe4 has open-sourced one. The CrowdStrike Threat Intelligence team publishes monthly indicators of compromise lists for this campaign, including known laptop farm IP ranges and behavioral signatures. For workers, the personal risk angle matters too. If your identity is the one being used by a North Korean operator, you may not know until the company that hired the imposter calls the IRS about wages reported under your social security number. By then, your tax return is flagged, your credit is damaged, and you are explaining to federal investigators why you appear to have been working at 3 places you have never heard of. The FTC's identity theft hotline has been routing these cases since 2023. If you have ever sold or shared your identity online, or had a major data breach involving SSN exposure, that risk is real. The deepfake hiring scam is, in every honest reading, a vulnerability of remote-first hiring meeting a nation-state actor with deep technical resources and zero ethical constraints. It is not going away. The companies that have hired and caught operators are not naming them publicly, because the disclosure invites both customer churn and shareholder lawsuits. The companies that have hired operators and not caught them yet are statistically the larger group. If you are hiring technical staff over Zoom in 2026, the chance that at least one applicant in your funnel is part of this operation is no longer hypothetical. The defense is friction, slow, expensive, verifiable, and human.